Good evening and welcome to Newsnight. I'm Addie Deal. Tonight we'll be covering all your international, national, and local news. Find out what milestone was just celebrated by Queen Elizabeth II, as well as more details on a rescue mission in Morocco. Also, our reporters will tell you all about Florida's new quote, "Don't Say Gay" bill, and who the FBI has finally detained. Lastly, we'll have your local Pittsburgh news as well as your weekly weather forecast. All this and more coming up on Newsnight. Rescuers in Morocco worked for 4 days straight to save a 4-year-old boy who was trapped in a well. The boy, known as Ryan, was playing near the well on February 2nd when he fell down it. Ryan was discovered after his mother heard crying from the opening, which caused her to call the authorities. The well was more than 100 feet deep and with an opening only 1.5 feet wide. It was drilled by up to 90 feet by machinery overnight. The rescuers did face some difficulties, however, due to the horizontal gap that connected the well with the parallel hole. It took time for the rescuers to reach the boy. Along with drilling, food and water was sent down to Ryan. His father claimed that he saw the boy move and drink some of the water, and the food that was lowered down by rope was also taken off the rope. As the rescue continued, it gained national attention, with the hashtag #SaveRyan going viral across North Africa. Ryan was retrieved after 5 days of rescue attempts, but unfortunately did not survive. The royal palace and King Mohammed VI himself released a statement to the public saying, quote, "Following the tragic incident that claimed the life of child Ryan Oram, His Majesty King Mohammed VI, may God protect him, made a phone call to Mr. Khalid Oram and Mrs. Wasima Kirshish, the parents of the deceased who passed away, after falling into a well." End quote. The Spanish Parliament ratified the government's labor reform by a margin of just one mistaken vote. This reform will unlock billions of euros in the European Union aid and will cut the proportion of temporary work contracts to prevent companies from having employees work indefinitely on a temporary contract. The Conservative People's Party said that a, quote, "computer error" meant that one of its members appeared to erroneously back the measure and was not permitted to change his vote. The bill narrowly passed in a 175 to 174 vote over mostly conservative opposition parties. Pablo Simón, a professor of politics at Madrid's Carlos III University, said that this bill was, quote, "the most important structural reform of this parliament," adding that the reform would withstand as it ultimately will, quote, "tweak rather than overturn labor market changes enacted by a previous center-right government a decade ago." Before the current monarchy, the longest reign in English history was Queen Victoria. However, this week Queen Elizabeth II celebrated yet another record-breaking anniversary as the Queen of England. Reporter Sam Hindman has more information.
On February 6, British Queen Elizabeth became the first monarch of her nation to achieve what is known as a Platinum Jubilee, or 70-year reign. This accomplishment is not one to be taken lightly. In fact, her company is sparing, as there had only ever been 3 other monarchs to reach this milestone. Elizabeth is not only the longest-serving British monarch, but is also the longest-serving female monarch in history. Her reign has spanned throughout the entire post-World War II era. She's met every United States president since Harry S. Truman, and she's served 14 British prime ministers, including Winston Churchill. The Jubilee is planned to be celebrated in June with a full week of festivities, including a parade of more than 5,000 British performers. Though her reign has been extensive and the royal family is not without its share of criticisms, most British citizens are anxiously awaiting the celebration. The 95-year-old Queen, according to market research by YouGov, currently holds the highest approval rating of all of the British royals at 76%.
The American pizza restaurant chain Domino's is now offering carry-out tips to its customers. This new service is exactly what it sounds like. Domino's is paying people to pick up their own pizza instead of having it delivered. The company will give anyone that picks up their online carry-out order a $3 tip that they can use on their next online order if it is placed within the following week. Although this may seem like a solution to Domino's restaurants' lack of delivery drivers, Domino's executive president Art Delia argues that it takes skill to get pizza from a Domino's store to your door and wants to reward customers for being their own delivery drivers because we think they deserve it. This carryout tip will be available until May 22nd, 2022, which encompasses one of Domino's busiest days of the year, Super Bowl Sunday, when they sell an average 2 million pizzas every year. Coming up after the break, we have your need-to-know national news. Find out what state is facing controversy following a new anti-LGBT ruling. Also, we'll let you know what out-of-this-world place is going to be brought back down to earth. Stay tuned. Good evening.
Good evening.
Good evening, and welcome back to NewsNight. Most of the student body of the Pittsburgh Public School.
Some of the United States allies.
Thursday, the FBI was seen rating.
Let's get started with today's forecast.
Today's high will only reach about 31 degrees.
It's looking a little cooler than we've seen in the past few weeks.
All this and more,
All this and more
All this and more coming up on NewsNight.
coming up on NewsNight.
coming up on NewsNight.
Travis McMichael, one of the 3 people on trial for the murder of Ahmaud Arbery, has withdrawn his guilty plea. Travis McMichael and his father Greg McMichael were both convicted of murder in a state trial that sentenced them to life in prison without parole. And Brian, the neighbor who filmed the ordeal, was sentenced to life with possibility of parole back in November. However, the 3 are accused of federal charges for violating Arbery's civil rights and targeting him because of his race. The McMichaels reached a plea bargain with prosecutors that avoided a second trial, pleading guilty to spend the first 30 years of their life sentences in federal prison as opposed to state prison. After Arbery's family expressed their discontent with this, Judge Lisa Godbey Wood rejected the notion after an emotional hearing where Arbery's family declared their want for all 3 to spend their whole life sentence in state prison, where conditions are tougher. Both McMichaels were given the choice to keep their guilty plea, letting Wood choose the punishment, or stand trial. Both McMichaels dropped their guilty plea and their federal trial began Monday, February 7th. The state of Florida is trying to introduce new legislation that will place limitations on what schools in the state are able to say about sexual orientation and other LGBT+ ideas. Reporter Erin Ute has more information about this bill.
A Florida bill that would limit classroom discussions on sexual orientation and gender identity and encourage parents to sue schools or teachers that engage in these topics is speeding throughout the House and Senate. It is being called the, quote, "Don't Say Gay bill" by LGBTQ+ advocates, who fear that this bill is, if signed into law, that it could act as a complete ban on the lessons on LGBTQ+ oppression, history, and discussions about LGBT+ identities. Activists say that erasing this presence from schools may imply to students that their gender identity or sexual orientation is something to be ashamed of or to be hidden. Heather Wickley of the Zebra Coalition, an LGBTQ+ advocacy group in Florida, said, quote, "We have to create a learning environment where they feel safe and healthy, or it is not an effective learning environment. When you have laws like this that directly attack our kids for who they are, it prevents them from learning. It prevents them from being able to be healthy," end quote. The 2 bills in the state legislature, HB 1557 and SB 1834, state that a school district, quote, "may not encourage classroom discussion about sexual orientation or gender identity in primary grade levels or in a manner that is not age appropriate or developmentally appropriate for students," end quote. The House of Education and Employment Committee has moved the bill forward, handing it off to the Judiciary Committee. It adds that parents who violate this rule can sue, seeking damages and reimbursement for attorney fees and court costs. 2021 was a record-breaking year for anti-LGBTQ+ legislation, according to the Human Rights Campaign. More than 250 of these kind of bills were introduced, and at least 17 of them were enacted into law. Several states, including Arizona, Florida, Indiana, Kentucky, Oklahoma, New Hampshire, and North Dakota, have already introduced these anti-LGBTQ+ legislation bills in 2022.
After over a decade on the run, the FBI has finally caught one of the suspects on their most wanted list. Sam Heineman has more information on where, when, and how they finally detained him.
The Federal Bureau of Investigations announced the capture of a suspect on their top 10 most wanted list on Friday, February 4th. The suspect, Octaviano Juarez-Coro, had spent 16 years on the run after alleged gunfire during a Memorial Day celebration. Juarez-Coro and his estranged wife were at the time in the midst of arguments revolving around his presence at the holiday picnic, where he had insisted on seeing his 3-year-old daughter. He is alleged to have pulled a gun, shooting his wife as well as 4 other individuals after she had demanded that he leave. The shooting had resulted in the death of 2 victims, his wife surviving 2 gunshot wounds to the chest. A warrant for his arrest was issued on June 1, 2006 for first-degree homicide and first-degree attempted homicide. After escaping the country and being added to the most wanted list last September, the FBI has now reported him as detained in Mexico. It is currently unclear whether Juarez-Coro has retained a lawyer or will be extradited back to the United States for trial.
The International Space Station, first launched in 1998, will cease operations by the year 2031, according to NASA. The space station was discovered to have several cracks and fissures in 2019, which pose safety risks for the pressurized atmosphere in the station. NASA announced that replacement for the ISS will be launched in the late 2020s and will be made up of components from private spaceflight companies, which have proven successful over the past several years. When it is finally decommissioned, the International Space Station will fall out of orbit and be safely plunged into the Pacific Ocean. Coming up after the break, find out all your local Pittsburgh news. Hear about what merchandise is the new hot item that has inspired a Pittsburgh resident must-have. Also, hear about the fatal shooting of a local Pittsburgh man. We'll be right back. UPMC and Allegheny Health Network hospitals are beginning to roll out a new drug that will help immunocompromised individuals against COVID-19. This drug is called Evusheld and was developed by AstraZeneca. After getting green-lighted by the FDA in December, it has gained use throughout the country. The federal government first purchased 700,000 doses and an additional 500,000 in recent times. Due to the somewhat limited nature of the drug, hospitals are having difficulty deciding what the deciding factor will be for which individuals will receive a dose. Demand is very high due to the high volume of immunocompromised in the area, so age and underlying conditions are being factored into the decision. UPMC has received 5,952 doses and has administered around 1,000. The Allegheny Health Network has received 1,800 doses and is receiving about 260 a week. Health officials estimate that there will there are about 85,000 patients eligible for the drug, with 13,000 in the first priority group. Health officials are currently reaching out to the first priority group to let them know they are eligible to receive their dosage. Faith leaders in Pittsburgh are calling for answers in the death of Peter Spencer. He was shot 9 times while on a camping trip with co-workers in Venango County back in December. He was the only black person in the group, and his supporters believe that he was hunted down. His family has been given very little answers since his death and have since hired their own medical examiner. Faith leaders are now joining the fight for information and an arrest in Spencer's death. Executive Director of the Pennsylvania Council of Churches, Reverend Dr. Larry Pickin, said, "Our voices will continue to stir and uncover and speak out until we learn what has happened to our brother. His blood keeps crying out to us." The Venango County District Attorney's Office sent out a statement about the case. They said this investigation would conclude in 4 to 6 weeks from the date of January 25th. Public information must be tempered with the obligation of a complete and thorough investigation. Supporters of the family are not happy with that time, saying that 6 weeks without closure is causing their patients to run thin. They said they won't stop until they get justice and Spencer can rest peacefully. Third Episcopal District of AME Church Bishop Irenaeus E. McLeod Jr. said this is not the end, and we're going to keep pressing and keep walking around the mountain until justice is served on the person who took the life of this young man. The Fern Bridge collapse in Frick Park a few weeks ago has inspired local artists. You'll find viral photos, tweets, and memes that poke fun at this Pittsburgh fail. Aaron Yude has more information about what kind of merchandise is filling the shelves.
Items inspired by Pittsburgh's infrastructure failures are becoming as collectible as bearing the city's sports teams. After a Port Authority bus fell into a sinkhole on 10th Street in downtown Pittsburgh, sinkhole bus merchandise quickly became popular. Most notably, artist Toby Fraley released his sinkhole bus commemorative ornament and followed it up with his 2020 repaired sinkhole ornament after the massive hole was finally filled in and repaved. Now another bus casualty is being memorialized, specifically that of the Port Authority bus, along with other vehicles when Fern Hollow Bridge in Frick Park collapsed. Pittsburgh-based union screen printing shop Commonwealth Press created a $25, quote, "What the Frick" t-shirt featuring an illustration of the nearly 60-foot-long Port Authority bus being lifted by a crane from the wreckage. Over in Millville, black-owned smoke shop Curated Flame is selling a, quote, "Frick Park Bridge bus t-shirt with artist Kira Moon. Also priced at $25, the black t-shirt features an illustration of the bus being dangled over a broken bridge with strings from a hand as if the vehicle were being a marionette. Commonwealth Press is donating a part of the proceeds from the t-shirt sales to fundraising efforts for those who were injured in the collapse. Owner Dan Rug says that some of the proceeds will go to a GoFundMe page for a couple who was injured, and they are looking for others as well.
After initial support from city officials, Pittsburgh is now no longer in contention for the 2024 Republican National Convention. In a story first broke by Politico, GOP officials are now touring Milwaukee, Nashville, and Salt Lake City for their hosting potential. The reason for Pittsburgh's removal from the short list is notably its weather, while vying for their city to be chosen. Salt Lake officials showed members of the Republican Party dramatized clips of summer hailstorms and a tornado that hit Pittsburgh in 1999. This show seemed to be enough to convince officials to favor another city, which is to be revealed this August. The past few weeks have teased some warmer weather and some rainy days. Weather reporter Craig Frykowski has all the details of what you can expect from Pittsburgh's weather this week.
Thanks, Addie. Let's kick it off with tomorrow's weather forecast. Tomorrow, the temperatures will drop again with a high of 38 degrees. There's an 84% chance of precipitation. With the low temperatures, this will most likely be snow. Thankfully, the snow is not expected to stick around for very long. The low for tomorrow evening is going to be 28 degrees. The nighttime will be cloudy, breezy, and overall colder. Let's move to look at the rest of this week's forecast. This week is going to be a bit all over the place temperature-wise. The weekend high is going to be Friday's 48 degrees. The sun will be showing throughout that day, so we finally get a chance to warm up. Other temperatures for this week are low, with Sunday and Monday both being in the mid-20s and lots of cloud cover. Then in the middle of the week, temperatures are going to rise again, with Tuesday and Thursday both being in the low 40s. Just a little bit of snow for tomorrow is the only chance of precipitation we're going to see this week, so stay warm and get outside. That's all I have for you this week. Back to you, Addie.
Thank you for tuning in to this episode of Newsnight. If you want to see more, check out our social media pages on both Facebook and Instagram at UView Television. You can also check out more episodes on our YouTube channel or our website uview.pointpark.edu. I'm Addie Deal, and from everyone here at Newsnight, thank you for watching and have a great evening.